Hey there. Ready to dive into some deep waters. Today, we're exploring this fascinating world of self-discovery, those pesky limits we tend to bump up against, and the intriguing notion that separation might actually be an illusion.
Sounds like quite the head trip. Where are we starting this exploration?
Well, we're taking our cues from a conversation between Robert Edward Grant and Peter Crone, a self-proclaimed mind architect.
Mind architect. I'm intrigued already. So, what kind of mental structures is this Crone fellow building?
Oh, get this. He kicks things off by talking about how he became an orphan at just 7 years old. Heavy stuff, right? But he doesn't dwell on the sadness. Instead, he talks about how this experience actually shaped his perspective in a profound way.
That makes sense. When you go through
Yeah.
something so intense at such a young age, it's bound to influence how you view the world and your place in it.
Exactly. Crone believes that becoming an orphan actually opened them up to a deeper understanding of suffering, both his own and the suffering of others. It's like it cultivated a deep well of compassion within him.
That's a powerful takeaway. It challenges us to consider how even difficult experiences can be transformative, even if we wouldn't choose them.
Right, and it leads us right into Crone's central idea, the illusion of separation.
Hmm.
He argues that the root of much of our suffering comes from this belief that we're separate from each other, from the world around us, and even from different parts of ourselves.
I've had this concept echoed in various spiritual and philosophical traditions. The idea is that we're not isolated individuals, but rather interconnected parts of a larger whole, like threads in a tapestry.
Crone actually uses a clever analogy to explain this. He talks about the U-inverse. Imagine the universe not as a straight line extending infinitely, but as a U shape folding back on itself.
Okay, I'm visualizing it. So
Yeah.
how does that tie into the illusion of separation?
Well, he's saying that everything we perceive as separate is actually connected like points along that curved U shape. Ultimately, all those seemingly separate points lead back to the same source.
Yeah.
It's a mind-bending way to visualize how interconnected we truly are.
I can see how that challenges the way we typically think about ourselves and the world. But how does this concept actually play out in our daily lives?
That's a great question. Think about those times you feel lonely, isolated, misunderstood. Crone would say those feelings stem from that illusion of separation. We forget we're part of something bigger and get caught up in our own little bubbles.
So by recognizing our interconnectedness, we might be able to lessen those feelings of isolation and tap into a greater sense of belonging and compassion.
Exactly. And it's not just touchy-feely stuff either. This idea of interconnectedness has real-world implications.
Yeah.
Later in the conversation, Crone talks about how it plays out in business relationships, even our understanding of free will versus destiny.
Oh, the free will versus destiny debate. That's a rabbit hole I could wander down for hours. I'm curious to hear what Crone has to say about it.
Well, Grant throws that very question at him, free will or destiny. But instead of taking sides, Crone suggests that the question itself arises from that same illusion of separation.
So he's saying that the whole debate is kind of a red herring. We get so hung up on the idea of individual choice that we miss the bigger picture.
He even brings up the Matrix. Remember the Oracle telling Neo, "You've already made the choice. You're here to understand why." Crone uses that scene to illustrate how our perception of free will might be limited.
That's a pretty powerful connection. So is he suggesting that we have no choice at all, that we're just puppets dancing to some predetermined tune?
Not exactly. He seems to be pointing towards a more nuanced understanding of choice. It's like maybe we make choices, but those choices are influenced by a web of interconnected forces we don't fully grasp.
That's an intriguing way to frame it. It's not about denying personal agency, but recognizing that our choices are always part of a larger interconnected system.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about Crone's experience in the business world. He shares a fascinating story about a lesson he learned from a renowned executive coach named Ram Charan.
I've heard of Chiron. He's worked with some of the biggest names in business. What kind of lesson did Crone learn from him?
Well, Charan emphasized the importance of self-awareness, especially in leadership roles. He pointed out that even with the best intentions, our actions can sometimes have unintended consequences.
The classic disconnect between intentions and impact. It's so easy to get caught up in our own heads and lose sight of how our actions are actually affecting others.
Right. And Crone learned this lesson the hard way. He went through a 360-degree review process where he got feedback from colleagues, superiors, and subordinates. And let's just say his self-perception didn't quite match up with how others experienced him.
Ouch, that's going to be a humbling experience. But I imagine it was also incredibly valuable in terms of developing greater self-awareness.
Absolutely. It was a wake-up call that made him realize the importance of seeking feedback and being open to seeing himself through the eyes of others.
It reminds us that we all have blind spots, and those blind spots can have a significant impact on our relationships and effectiveness in the world.
And, this ties back to Crone's idea of the illusion of separation. When we assume we know ourselves fully, we close ourselves off to the possibility that our perception might be limited.
It's like that saying, we don't know what we don't know, and
Hmm.
sometimes it takes a little external feedback to illuminate those blind spots.
You know what else Crone talked about that I found really insightful? The power of curiosity.
Oh, I love that. It's like he's reminding us to tap into our inner child. Kids are masters at asking why. They're constantly seeking to understand the world around them.
Exactly. And Crone believes that somewhere along the line, we tend to lose that innate curiosity. We get comfortable with our assumptions and stop questioning things.
Which is a shame because curiosity is the engine of growth and learning. It keeps us engaged, open to new possibilities, and prevents us from getting stuck in rigid ways of thinking.
Crone argues that cultivating curiosity is essential for self-discovery. It's about approaching life with a beginner's mind, always asking questions and being open to new perspectives.
It's like that famous Zen saying, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few.
Crone believes that by reconnecting with that childlike sense of wonder and asking why, we can break free from limiting beliefs and expand our understanding of ourselves and the world.
That's a powerful message. It reminds us that the journey of self-discovery is not about arriving at some final destination, but rather about embracing the process of continuous learning and exploration.
And speaking of exploration, Crone has some thought-provoking things to say about relationships, especially intimate ones. He sees them as powerful tools for growth.
Oh, I'm all ears. Relationships can be such fertile ground for self-discovery, both the beautiful and the challenging aspects.
Well, Crone describes relationships, especially those close and intimate ones, as mirrors. He says they reflect back to us those areas where we're not free.
Now, that's an intriguing way to put it. What does he mean by not free in this context?
He's talking about those places where we're still holding ourselves back, where we're clinging to old patterns, beliefs, and fears that prevent us from fully showing up and expressing ourselves.
So it's like those limiting beliefs and insecurities we carry get amplified in the crucible of intimate relationships.
Exactly. And while that can be uncomfortable, even painful at times, Crone believes it's ultimately a gift. It's an opportunity to confront those limitations head-on and break free from them.
That makes sense. Relationships can push our buttons and trigger those deep-seated insecurities we might not even be aware of. But if we can face those challenges with courage and compassion, they can lead to profound growth and transformation.
He even touches on a concept called moment-by-moment monogamy, introduced by Dr. Zach Bush, which emphasizes the idea that both we and our relationships are constantly evolving.
I like that. It suggests that relationships aren't static, but rather dynamic processes that require ongoing awareness, communication, and a willingness to adapt and grow together.
Okay, now for a little plot twist, despite all these profound insights, Crone has never used psychedelics.
Really? That's surprising considering the growing interest in psychedelics as tools for self-exploration and spiritual growth.
Right, it's a stark contrast to Grant, who initially shared similar reservations but ended up having a powerful experience with mushrooms.
It's a good reminder that there are many paths to self-discovery. What works for one person might not resonate with another, and that's okay.
And while Crone hasn't personally explored psychedelics, he's open to the possibility. He recognizes that there are multiple doorways to expanding consciousness and transcending limitations.
It's important to approach these tools with respect and caution, understanding that they can be powerful catalysts for growth, but also require responsible use and integration.
Grant actually has a really striking way of describing his experience with mushrooms. He says they don't present an illusion, they reveal the illusion we're already living in.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. What kind of illusion is he referring to?
Well, he describes seeing the structure of space-time in the form of rainbow-colored flowers of light. It sounds like he experienced a profound shift in perception, glimpsing a reality beyond our ordinary senses.
It's like those mushrooms helped him see through the veil of everyday consciousness and experience the interconnectedness of all things directly.
And Grant's enthusiasm for psychedelics, coupled with Crone's insights, really got me thinking about those doors of perception and how they might offer a different way of understanding the world and ourselves.
It's definitely a topic worthy of further exploration. But for now, let's shift our focus to Grant's concept of heart-brain awareness.
Okay, tell me more about this heart-brain awareness. What's that all about?
Well, it's all about integrating both our intuition and our logic. recognizing that the heart can be a powerful guide in addition to our rational mind.
So it's not about choosing one over the other, but finding that sweet spot where they work together, right?
Exactly. It's not about rejecting logic or reason. It's about recognizing that the heart offers a unique kind of wisdom that can complement and enrich our rational understanding.
This reminds me of how Crone talked about the illusion of separation. Could this heart-brain awareness be a way to bridge that gap between our internal world and the world outside of ourselves?
That's an interesting connection. Perhaps by integrating heart and mind, we're also moving towards a more integrated experience of ourselves and the world around us.
And, this idea integrating heart and mind really resonates with ancient wisdom traditions that emphasize the heart as the seat of intuition, wisdom, and compassion. It's like a remembering of something we've always known.
It's fascinating how these ancient ideas are finding new expression in contemporary thought. It's like we're coming full circle, integrating ancient wisdom with modern scientific understanding.
Now, here's a question that really struck me. Crone said that hating our neighbors is often a reflection of self-hatred. That's a powerful statement, isn't it?
It is. It challenges us to look at our judgments of others and consider whether they might be pointing to something within ourselves that we haven't fully accepted.
It's like when we project our own insecurities or unresolved issues onto others. It's easier to find fault outside of ourselves than to confront those shadows within.
Crone suggests that true self-love is essential to breaking free from this cycle of judgment and projection. But he emphasizes that self-love goes beyond bubble baths and affirmations. It's about radical self-acceptance.
He even uses the phrase, fall in love with the earth. What do you think he means by that?
It sounds like he's advocating for a deep appreciation for the beauty and complexity of life, including our own messy, imperfect selves. It's about embracing the totality of experience, both the light and the shadow.
So instead of trying to escape Earth, as Crone puts it, the key is to fall in love with it and ourselves, just as we are imperfections and all.
That's a beautiful sentiment. It reminds me of that quote from Rumi, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." It's in those places where we feel broken or flawed that we have the opportunity to experience the deepest healing and transformation.
This all ties back to that idea of the you inverse, that interconnectedness of everything. When we embrace ourselves fully, warts and all, we're also embracing the wholeness of life.
It's like we're expanding our capacity for love and compassion to encompass not just ourselves, but all beings.
Okay, I need to confess something. When Crone started talking about geometry as a pathway to spiritual awakening, I was totally hooked. Apparently, drawing geometric patterns can release natural DMT, leading to profound insights and expanded awareness.
That's fascinating. It speaks to the power of sacred geometry, which has been recognized across cultures as a symbolic language that reveals the underlying patterns and principles of the universe.
I've always been intrigued by sacred geometry, and this conversation really piqued my curiosity to explore it further. I'm even thinking about trying those mushrooms Grant raved about.
While I'm not personally drawn to psychedelics, I appreciate how both Grant and Crone emphasize that there are many paths to self-discovery. What matters is finding what resonates with you and using it as a tool for growth and exploration.
And speaking of exploring the unknown, here's a mind-blowing thought that Crone shared. He believes the more we learn, the less we actually know.
It's a paradox, isn't it? But it makes sense when you think about it. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. It's like we're constantly expanding the boundaries of our awareness, and with that expansion comes a deeper understanding of the vastness of the unknown.
Crone calls this the zone of I don't know what I don't know. It's a reminder that true learning is not about accumulating knowledge, but about embracing the mystery of life.
That's a profound insight. It's about letting go of the need for certainty and control and diving headfirst into the unknown. It's in that space of not knowing that true growth and transformation can occur.
So how do we navigate this zone of I don't know what I don't know without getting overwhelmed or lost?
Crone suggests that curiosity and a willingness to be teachable are our most valuable tools. It's about cultivating a beginner's mind, asking questions, and being open to new perspectives.
It's about embracing that sense of wonder and approaching life as continuous exploration. And that requires a certain level of trust, doesn't it? Trust in the process, trust in ourselves, trust in something bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely. It's about surrendering to the mystery of life and allowing ourselves to be guided by intuition, synchronicities, and those unexpected twists and turns that life throws our way.
So what does it really mean to transcend those limits we perceive? Crone seems to be suggesting that it's not about achieving some superhuman feat or becoming a flawless being. It's more about a shift in perspective, a willingness to let go of limiting beliefs and embrace the fullness of who we are.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about recognizing our inherent wholeness and realizing that those limitations we perceive are often self-imposed.
And that realization can be incredibly liberating, can't it? It empowers us to step into our full potential and create a life that is aligned with our authentic selves.
It reminds me of that scene in The Matrix where Neo finally stops the bullets. He's no longer bound by the limitations of the Matrix because he's shifted his perception of reality.
Oh, I love that analogy. Like he's finally tapped into his true power, not by denying the existence of limitations, but by transcending them through a shift in consciousness.
Exactly. And Crone emphasizes that we all have that power within us. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness, embracing our wholeness, and cultivating a deep sense of self-love.
This whole conversation has really got me thinking about the power of belief. Crone seems to be suggesting that our beliefs shape our reality.
He's definitely advocating for the power of mindset. If we believe we're limited, then we'll experience life through that lens. But if we can shift our beliefs to embrace a more expansive view of ourselves and the world, then those limitations begin to dissolve.
Crone believes that victimhood is a choice, not a state of being. He's not denying the reality of suffering or trauma, but he's suggesting that we have the power to choose how we respond to those experiences.
It's about taking responsibility for our own growth and evolution, even when faced with challenging circumstances. It's about asking, what can I learn from this? Instead of, why is this happening to me?
It's about recognizing that even difficult experiences can be transformative, even if we wouldn't choose them. And it's about trusting that we have the inner resources to navigate those challenges and emerge stronger on the other side.
It's about shifting from a mindset of scarcity and limitation to a mindset of abundance and possibility.
So it's not about denying the challenges of life, but about approaching them with a different perspective, a perspective that empowers us to find meaning and growth even in the midst of adversity.
Exactly. And that requires a certain level of courage and resilience, a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones and embrace the unknown.
Okay, we've covered so much ground already. Let's recap some of the key takeaways from Crone's conversation with Grant. We've talked about the illusion of separation, the importance of self-awareness and curiosity, the transformative power of relationships.
And let's not forget about Crone's emphasis on self-love, the idea of embracing both our light and shadow, and the power of choosing our perspective.
Oh, and those intriguing insights about sacred geometry and the potential of psychedelics as tools for expanding consciousness.
Crone and Grant really packed a lot into this conversation, and I think what resonated most with me is their shared belief in the power of the human spirit to transcend limitations and create a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I love how they emphasize that there's no one right path to self-discovery. It's about finding what works for you and embracing the journey with an open heart and a curious mind.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? How can they apply these insights to their own lives?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that the illusion of separation, really does impact so much of our lives. If we can start to see ourselves as part of something bigger, like connected to everything and everyone, it can really shift our perspective on things. Like suffering, compassion, even our relationships.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And it's not just about recognizing that connection intellectually. It's about really feeling it in your heart, experiencing that sense of oneness with the world around you.
And remember how we talked about those mirrors Crone mentioned? Relationships can be tough sometimes, but they offer incredible opportunities for growth. They can help us see those blind spots, those places where we're holding ourselves back.
It's about using those reflections, to become more self-aware, more compassionate, and ultimately more free.
And speaking of freedom, Crone's take on self-love really resonated with me. It's not about vanity or ego. It's about radical acceptance, embracing all parts of ourselves, even those messy bits we tend to hide.
It's about recognizing that wholeness. It includes those imperfections. In fact, it's often in those imperfections that we find our greatest strengths and most valuable lessons.
And don't forget the power of curiosity. Crone really emphasized how important it is to keep asking questions to approach life with a beginner's mind. It's about staying open to new possibilities and never losing that sense of wonder.
That's where true growth happens, when we step outside of our comfort zones and embrace the unknown. And remember, it's okay to not have all the answers. In fact, embracing that zone of I don't know what I don't know can be incredibly liberating.
That reminds me of Crone's final point. The more we learn, the less we actually know. It's a reminder that true wisdom lies in acknowledging the vastness of what we don't know and approaching life with a sense of humility and curiosity.
It's about recognizing that the journey of self-discovery is ongoing, There's no final destination, no point at which we've arrived. It's about embracing the process of continuous learning and evolution.
So if you're feeling stuck or limited in any area of your life,
Hmm.
maybe ask yourself, where are you clinging to old beliefs or resisting the discomfort of not knowing? What new possibilities might open up if you allowed yourself to let go of those limitations and embrace the fullness of who you are?
Remember, the power to transcend those limits lies within you. Keep diving deep, keep exploring, and never stop asking why. You never know what incredible discoveries await.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Hope you found this conversation as thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing the mystery of life.